Hi guys, I'm Autumn from itsalwaysautumn.com, and today I'm going to show you how I make my tall Pinterest images for blog posts using Adobe Photoshop Elements 15. Every time you publish a post, you want to make sure you've created a nice tall image that'll get noticed and pinned on Pinterest. So I'm going to walk you through how I created this image right here for this caramel apple butter post. We're going to start by opening a new blank file. For my Pinterest images, I make sure to set the width at 1000 pixels and the height at 2800 pixels with a resolution of 72. This is because we know that Pinterest really likes a 1 to 2.8 aspect ratio. Those pins get seen more. So we have kind of a blank slate here, and what we're going to do is open up some photos and start dropping them over here. But before I start doing that, I'm going to draw some shapes. I'm going to draw some rectangles on my tall image here to kind of hold the place, be a placeholder for my photos. So over here on the left, I'm going to click the rectangle tool, or I could have hit U. And then I'm just going to click to set the foreground color. I just need to make sure it's some sort of color, so black is fine. It doesn't matter what color, you just don't want it white. You want it to be visible. And then I'm just going to click and drag to draw a rectangle at the top here. And then I'm going to change the color just so that it's easier for you guys to see what I'm working on before I draw another rectangle. But that is not something you need to do. Again, it doesn't matter what color your rectangles are. So I'm just going to draw 3 and get them different colors. Okay, I'm going to hit V to get our move tool back, or you could click it right over here in the left. Okay, so we have 3 rectangles. One thing you'll notice as I've been drawing those rectangles is that over here on the right hand side, you can see mini versions of everything that I just did. This is our layers palette. Think of your layers palette as your stack of different elements, shapes, pictures, text, anything that you've added to your image is going to show up in a stack over here. Any portions of these that you see this white and gray checker box, that means that that portion of the layer is transparent. So our background right now is white, and then we have our next layer is this top rectangle, and then the rest of that layer is transparent. Our next layer up is the blue rectangle, and the red rectangle is on the very top. So if we move this red rectangle around, it's going to cover up anything that's below it in the layers palette. If we move the blue one, it'll cover up the black because it's below it, but it'll slide behind the red one. So that's kind of how a basic overview of how layers work. You can change the order of the layers over here in the palette just by grabbing them and dragging them up or down. Now the red one is kind of on the bottom of the stack, so if we move it, it hides behind the other rectangles. Okay, so this is just kind of a basic setup for a tall Pinterest image with spots for 3 photos and then an open spot here to add a title. So the next thing I want to do is just open up some photos that I am going to use here. So I'm going to open 5 because I'm not sure exactly which ones I want. So one thing that you might need to do is go under Adobe Photoshop Elements Editor to Preferences and General. Right here where it says Allow Floating Documents in Expert Mode, make sure that that is checked. Otherwise, you're only going to be able to see one photo or file at a time, and we want to be able to see a whole bunch at a time. So I opened up 5 photos, and they're all kind of on top of each other. So I'm going to shrink each one down so that we can see more at the same time. To do this, to zoom out or make a photo smaller, you can just use the Command minus key, and then Command plus would zoom back in or make a photo bigger. Okay, now we can see all 5 of our photos. What we're going to do is we don't need to worry about cropping these photos to begin with. We're just going to grab one and drop it over onto our new file. Now, you'll see that I've done that and I've run into one problem. The problem is that I created this new file at 1,000 pixels wide. Each of these photos have come straight out of my camera at something like 5,000 pixels wide. So they're kind of just too big to be, they're hard to work with once I move them over. So before I drag them over, I'm just going to real quickly change the file size to make it a little bit smaller. So I go under Image, Resize, Image Size, and I'm going to change that to 1,500 pixels. Now I can grab this photo and drop it over to my new file. Okay, it's kind of hiding behind these rectangles here. If I move it down to the bottom, it shows in front of the red one, but it's behind the black or the blue rectangle. That's because of its position in the layer palette right here. But that's okay, because I want to put it into this bottom rectangle. We are going to use these shapes as clipping masks. What that means is these shapes are going to be like windows that let our picture show through them. Let me show you how that works. You put your photo in the layers palette right above the shape that you want to clip it into. And then you make sure your little pointer finger hovers on the line between the photo and the shape. Hold down the Alt or Option key and click. What that does is it clips the photo into that shape or makes the shape a window, and all we can see of the photo is what shows through that window. The cool thing is that the whole photo is still there. As I move it around, you can see that it hasn't cropped the photo. We haven't gotten rid of any of it. We've just clipped it into that shape. So once you click on your photo, you can see the bounding box of it that shows you where the edges of your photo are, and you can grab one of the corners and shrink your photo down if you want and move it around. You can grab the corners and make your photo a lot bigger if you'd like to zoom in on something. It just makes it really easy to size your photo and then position it inside that rectangle, which is acting as a clipping mask. We just hit the green check mark to commit that. So I really like this as a way to build collages, or anytime I'm building a file, one image that has a number of different pictures inside it, because this is the easiest way, I think, to work with building a collage. Okay, so let's drag a photo in and put it into this blue rectangle. We can click on it to select it in the Layers palette. And then we will, again, resize one of our photos. And then just drag it over and drop. And it's going to automatically show up in the Layers palette right above whichever shape we had selected. So again, we're going to hover in between, on the line in between the picture and the shape. Hold down the Alt Option key and click to clip that in. I can just click on the photo and move it around to try to see which portion of the photo I would like to show. And then again, I can resize it if I'd like. We'll go ahead and do the top one as well. I'm going to resize again, image size again, and then drag it over and clip it in. Okay, so we already know that we can change the size or position of the photo once it's clipped into a shape. That's really easy. But one other thing you can do is you can also change the size or position of the shape itself. So say I've decided I want this top rectangle to be a little bit taller. I just click on the shape in the layers palette to select it, and then I can grab the bounding boxes around it and I can change the size of this shape. I can make it a taller rectangle. I could make it narrower if I decided I wanted to put another one right next to it. It's really easy to customize and change either the shape itself or the photo inside it. You just need to make sure that you have clicked the photo in the layers palette if that's what you want to be adjusting, and you click the shape in the layers palette if the shape is what you want to be adjusting. I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller so I have plenty of room for a title. Okay, let's make this smaller so that it fits inside here a little bit better. This is starting to look nice, but I think I need to swap out this middle photo for something else because I feel like these three photos all look a little bit too similar. So I'm going to grab this close-up one, resize it, and drop it over. Okay, I want it to be in the layers palette just above the photo that's already clipped into that shape. I can just hover right here, hit my option key and click, and this photo is clipped into that shape as well. You can have a whole stack of things clipped into one shape if you like. I'll resize that. And then maybe I want to check because I'm not sure whether I want this photo or the one I had in there before. This is easy to do. I don't have to actually take this photo off. I can just click the little eye next to it in the layers palette and it will hide it. It'll make it invisible. So I can turn that layer off and see how it looked before and turn that layer back on to see how it looks now. So I really like how it is right now. So I'm going to leave that. I think I am going to swap out the bottom photo though for this fifth one because it has a little bit more color. So look, I clipped it in, but it's up here, so I've kind of lost it. I can't see it right now because the photo's right here, but it's clipped into this rectangle down here. So I can't see it, and when I try to grab, it's just doing weird things. If you want to make sure you select something in the layers palette and that you hold on to it, just hold down your command key and it'll force this one to stay selected. And then I can click and drag it down. All right, I really like how that works, how that looks. So I'm going to close up these photos. And then we're going to add some text. I use the same fonts for all of my tall Pinterest images. I'm going to hit T, or you can click on this button to get the type tool. I always start my title in this Mission Script regular font. So I can just click and type that in. You'll see over here in the layers palette that the text layer is showing. And then I can grab the edges of that and I can drag it to make it bigger. Anytime you want to edit your text, make sure you hit T to get the type tool. You could highlight it and just change the size right here if you like. Or you could, once it's highlighted with the text tool, you can click here to change the font, or you can click here to change the color. You can choose from one of the colors that come up, or you can hit this rainbow to bring up a color picker where you can pick any color you want just by clicking on it or changing the number, or you can come onto your photo itself and click around with the eyedropper tool and you can choose a color straight from your photo if you would like. I think I'm just going to leave it kind of a pink red. Okay. Once we have the move tool back, you can just grab it and move it around wherever you'd like. I always like to do 2 lines of title in 2 different fonts. So my second line, I use the Orator Standard font. And I just like to do it the same way every time so that my tall Pinterest images are branded so that people can look at them and know, oh, this looks like something I've seen before from It's Always Autumn. Okay, anytime I have 2 different lines of text and I want to center them, I'll click on one and then hold down the shift button and click on the other one to get them both selected at the same time. Once you have clicked on 2 objects at once, down at the bottom your align tools will come up, and it's really easy to just hit middle to center that. Then I can click them each one at a time and move them up and down and, you know, change the spacing however I like. Make them bigger or smaller. I made that one bigger, so I'm just going to center it again. Okay, this is looking great. Okay, so the last thing that I like to do is to add my logo. To add a logo, you are going to want to make sure that you have your logo saved as either a .psd or a PNG. That means they'll have a transparent background so that when you grab it and drop it over, it's here. Look, we can't see it because it's underneath everything in the layers palette. So let's just bring it to the top so that we'll be able to see it better. So that when you bring your logo over, you're not also bringing a white background that'll show up as a white box. Instead, I have a transparent background, so I can move this around and all you see is the logo. There's no white background to it. And then I can resize this in exactly the same way as I've done before. At this point, I have a finished Pinterest image. I can save it in a couple of different ways. First, I could go to Save As and add a title, and you'll see that this is saving it as a PSD. A PSD is a Photoshop file, and that means if I save it as a PSD, it'll be kind of a larger file, but when I open it again, all of these layers will be here, and I will be able to edit any of the layers individually. Once I'm finished editing though, I want to save it as a JPEG. A JPEG's a smaller file size, but it will flatten the image. Once the image is flattened, you'll see that all of the layers go away and I can no longer click on individual layers and edit them individually. So make sure you only save as a JPEG when it's completely finished and you don't need to keep editing it. You do want them as a JPEG before you upload it to your blog, however. Okay, I am going to hit Command Z, which is just the undo button. That's a good keystroke to remember so that I can go back to having all of the layers here one more time. Because I want to show you one thing that's really pretty cool. Once you've made one of these, you can go back in and you can turn off or delete all of the specific photos that you use, and then you have a template. And you can save this template as a PSD. And the next time you have a post and some photos that you want to put into a tall Pinterest image, all you have to do is open up this PSD and all of the legwork is done for you. You can change the text to anything else. You can plop different photos in and clip them in. You can change these photos, so maybe for the next one you only want 2 photos, one really tall down at the bottom and one at the top. And it is just so easy at this point to create your tall images because you already have a template saved. This is especially helpful when you're doing roundup posts where your Pinterest image is going to be a collage of 9 or 12 different photos. That can take a long time if you were trying to crop all those photos or something. What I do is I just have a couple different templates saved that have all of these shapes ready to go. And so when I want to create a Pinterest image for a roundup, all I have to do is open all of my photos and then drop them into that template and clip each photo into the shape. And it's very easy to make these tall images for roundup posts. Okay, let me just show you really quickly how you would create a template like this one that I used for this roundup post. So let me just close out of all of these. And let's start with a brand new blank file. Again, 1000 by 2800 is great. Okay, and so when I'm doing a roundup post, I often like to have 9 or 12 squares or rectangles that are all exactly the same size. So we'll go to our shape tool and make sure we have it, have rectangle chosen. And then under here, we can put in a fixed size. So my file is 1000 pixels wide. So I'm gonna say if I wanna make squares that are the same size, I'm gonna tell this I want boxes that are 333 pixels wide and 333 pixels high. And then instead of dragging to draw them, all I have to do is click and they show up. And I can just click 3 across here and now I have 3 squares. I hit V to get my move tool and I can line them up. I can also use the arrow tools to nudge them. Make sure everything's lined up really nicely. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so I have 3 boxes across the top. I like how that looks. I'm going to click the first one, hold the shift key, click the second one, click the third one. So now I have all 3 of them selected. So I'm going to hold down Command just to make sure, because Command, remember, holds on to whatever you have selected. And then I'm also going to hold the Alt key and click and drag. And that gives me an identical copy of what I had below. Okay, I can do it again. Hold Command to make sure I hold on to these 3. Click Alt and drag it down again. And then I can use my arrow keys to get these positioned exactly how I want them. So that makes it very simple to draw a lot of boxes that are exactly the same size. So maybe instead of squares, you wanted all of these to be rectangles. We can come to the layers palette and click the first shape and then hold the shift key and click the top one to select them all. And look, I can transform them as a group. And so they're all getting the same, they're all getting taller, or they'll all get shorter, they'll all stay exactly the same size. So I'm gonna do 9 rectangles, hit the check mark, hold down the Command key because that'll help me keep all of them selected, and then I can click and move them around as an entire group. Then I just can come back to my rectangle tool, and instead of a fixed size this time, just go unconstrained and then click and drag to draw the top rectangle. So that just took a couple of seconds, and that's how we would start making a template for a collage Pinterest image like this one here. Remember, save your templates as PSD files so that all of the layers will still be there and you can continue to edit them. Once you save something as a JPEG, it's going to look like this. It's all flattened onto one layer and we can't edit any of these things individually anymore. That's just fine for your files once they're done and ready to go up on your blog. Just make sure you keep a copy of your template as a PSD so you can use it over and over and save yourself time. Thanks for watching, guys. Visit me at itsalwaysautumn.com.